recording this, and it's recording. And then I want to share. Well, it doesn't have the screen that I want to share. We'll just share it to this. I know what you're looking at right now. You're like, what am I looking at? I'm going to get this out of your way. Okay. Can you guys all see this too?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. CrossFit, Orangetheory Fitness. What's the hype? That's kind of what this one is about, but I want to talk a little bit more about what it is and kind of like where it originated from. So AMRAP, WODs, splat workouts, full body, 1 hour workouts, cranking up the heart rate. What do all these things have in common? These are high intensity interval training type of workouts. So this is CrossFit, Orangetheory Fitness, and if you're reading this document throughout, I'll just abbreviate it as CF for CrossFit and OTF for Orangetheory Fitness. So what are these two things? I know some of you have probably friends that are doing this. They're going to Orangetheory 5 times a week, Monday through Friday, maybe even CrossFit. They're following a CrossFit regimen. They're consistently doing this. That's how they train. I'm going to dive into a little bit about those two types of workouts, or I guess they're kind of like not even just workouts. They're like honestly like systems now. Like or CrossFit is like essentially a sport now. So CrossFit was a fitness regimen created in 2000. It was actually conceived in like 1996 as Cross-Fit, which is kind of interesting, and they merged it together. And it was founded by Greg and Lauren Glassman. So basically, CrossFit's advocacy is constantly changing their workouts in opposition to the traditional systematic routines. So their emphasis was on functional strength and incorporating body weight and Olympic exercises. So it uses 9 foundational movements to teach the majority of exercises. And those movements are, air squat, front squat, overhead press, push jerk, deadlift, sumo, deadlift high pull, and medicine ball clean. So a lot of upper body movements here, a lot of fast upper body, high speed things for your upper body. Not to mention on here, there are rings. So they use rings as well, like you were to play on at a kid's park when you were younger, you were swinging on those. An example of CrossFit training is a constantly varied and high intensity. I already read that. Oh yeah, it consists of combination of different exercise elements, cardiovascular, gymnastic, which is those rings that I was talking about too, and doing handstands, things like that. Like they'll do handstands and do like push-ups in a handstand. Weightlifting exercises, combination of different elements that is supposed to promote an improvement in fitness. And I believe the idea too, when I was first hearing about CrossFit as well, is kind of like that cross training. So we know a lot of athletes, if they're consistently training the same way, so if runners are only ever just running, they need to implement some cross training in order to give their body a break from that same redundant type of movement. So I also think this was a concept too of like, oh, we want people to be able to run, but we also want people to be able to sprint. We want people to be able to throw weights around. So it's kind of like CrossFit, as in combining different elements all together. So in theory, I actually really like it in theory. It's functional movements, because I'm a biggie on functional movements, as you guys know. But also I like the aspect of, I can run, I can sprint, and I can do like weightlifting, which is, what I like to kind of have a balance of making me an entire athlete. Then I'm able to do all things. I'm able to bike, I'm able to do running and all that sorts of stuff. So CrossFit training sessions typically involve a workout of the day, and it is structured into a joint mobility, a warm-up, a technical portion, and a main portion. And I will say from experience, I dabbled in CrossFit this past summer. Mine consisted of an introduction to the movements, and then we did a warm-up. Warm-up was more of like a flow, so going through like groiners or something like I have you guys do, and then it went through I guess the technical portion would be as well as pick one of those lifts. So say it was push press, we would work up to doing a push press. So whether that was a basic couple of movements first with a barbell, and then we would get to doing the full entire push press and go for sets and reps given there for like, you want to try to get more and more weight on the bar. So I liked how it did implement a warm up, and they actually talked you through the movements, and then you slowly progress to like the main lift. And then the last bit would always be oh crap, I can't even think of what they're called anymore. Sam, you might be able to help me out with this one, but it's basically the huge cardio portion where you're doing just a bunch of, I don't even know, like a bunch of cardio stuff. What is that part called?
Isn't it like an AMRAP where you do as many reps as possible in a time?
Sometimes it could be that, but it's called something specific. I forget what they call that phase, but it is a lot of cardio stuff where you'd be on like this skier. I forget what it's called. It'll come to me later, but basically it's a huge cardio, fast-paced portion of it. But not all workouts are like that. Some would be, maybe it was just the whole entire workout was one sequence of exercises. So it's not always like that. And like I said, in this, they did like the idea of mixing it up. So doing different exercises throughout the week. But the WODs are performed with short or no breaks between exercises, repetitions, and rounds. Usually WODs are designed to perform the exercise in the shortest possible duration or to perform as many reps or rounds as possible in a given time period. So what she said, AMRAP, that was just trying to go as fast as you can, however many reps you can. Research has shown high favorability for community and motivation with implementation of this sport. So a lot of people that were past athletes, maybe college athletes, even high school athletes that miss that camaraderie that they had with a like-minded group of people, they can continue to get that in CrossFit. They're kind of, I think some people even refer to CrossFit as like a cult, but it's really just a tight community that they have of like-minded people who want to continue to train that way. And I will say CrossFit does get a lot of bad rep from other types of training, like, I don't even know, like bodybuilders are against CrossFitters. A lot of like health professionals, I know going in through like the physical therapy realm, we talked a lot of shit about CrossFit. And that's kind of why I wanted to dabble into CrossFit and experience it myself, because I'd heard a lot of shit about it. And then I seen a lot of people that love it. So I was like, okay, I have to experience this for myself. So that is kind of my approach. I like to experience and trial things myself to get my own opinion on it. But it has a level that you can enter in for just general training, or like I said, for athletes, this is highly admirable, is that, oh, you can do competitions with it. So you can eventually get to a point where you start training or get accepted into the CrossFit games, or like those high level competitions that you see. So in summary, it's basically HITT with also strength training, endurance, speed, and power components to it, with inability to cater to specificity for beginner. Okay, I can't even much of that right. It's hard to cater some of the movements to beginners. So if you're brand new to weightlifting, I think CrossFit's kind of very hard to get into, and it takes a lot of time to get used to the movements and understand them and then do them well with good form and technique. But it's kind of a go as you can, in which some will try to keep up with the demands of the class, especially the workout of the day. So if it's very fast paced and you're a beginner, you're going to try to keep up with the people around you, even if they're not all beginners too. And that can kind of lead to some issues there. But I mean, for some that could be inspiring and motivational, like, oh, well, I suck, but I'm going to pair next to somebody that's really good at this and fast. So I'm going to try to keep up with them. Orangetheory Fitness is newer. It was created in 2010 in Florida, actually, out of a jazzercise studio where they were doing more Pilates type of things. But each attendee has an option to wear a branded heart rate monitor that is synchronized to a screen displaying their performance for the entire class. Attendees are encouraged to accumulate spot points, which are based on the amount of time spent in the orange and red heart rate zones to achieve the post-exercise oxygen consumption, or the afterburn. So basically Orangetheory is big on entering these high heart rate zones, and you actually get more points in order to enter, like how long you entered in those heart rate zones, you get more points for. And you also get more points for showing up and going to many sessions. So studies have continuously shown that HITT is an extremely efficient way to maximize calorie burn. That's the name of the game at Orangetheory. The fitness philosophy, or Orange Effect, is based on maximizing excess post-exercise oxygen consumption. So I just generalize this as it's a high intensity exercise with minimal rest. They do have 3 types of equipment though. It is treadmill, rower, and weights. I think those are the three components to it, and you cycle through those throughout that workout. And people have an app that they download, so you're very much a part of a community as well. You can definitely see the Orangetheory people. They're posting about it. They have kind of like a tribe together. Again, a lot of people like to get communities together, so where you feel welcomed and belonging, even more favorable for you. But anyways, minimal rest as you're going through this, and they're hour long. So I think with CrossFit, you at least get rest as you're like easing into the workout, and the finisher is usually the fastest, like no rest ever there. And that's kind of more, I think, beneficial for people rather than what I'm seeing of Orangetheory, which I haven't done it myself. So this is all just other research and opinions, not my own. I don't even know if I really want to try it myself. I'm actually not so sure, but minimal rest involved in this, and you get incentives for hitting high ranges of heart rate and applauded for going to the most sessions that you can. So I just kind of don't agree with that. And you guys, if you've ever done an Orangetheory class, somebody tell me and give me some insight on what it's like inside. If anybody has, you can just go ahead and unmute yourself. I'm just curious. If not, I'll save those for the end. If you ever just want to like butt in on me, just butt in on me. So why these things need to be considered, why these 2 types of workouts need to be considered, is because not enough recovery is between sessions. And we're talking for these high intensity interval training, they need to be given with rest for 24 to 40 hours. And that's like the biggest part of all this is if you're being, like getting an incentive for doing Orangetheory and you're going in these high target heart rate zones multiple times a week, and you can go to multiple workouts in one day too. Like this is all included in getting more splat points. And I think that's kind of outrageous because these are high intensity classes. People shouldn't be able to do these every single day. That means they're not recovering from them. And that's where the problem is they're not recovering from these tough workouts. They're hard to be tailored to beginners. Like I said, for CrossFit, I think that's a little bit hard to do the WODs if you're a beginner and you're next to somebody who is experienced, but they do try to teach you and kind of separate you and give you some more guidance with the coaches on how to do movements properly and slowly ease you into it. But for the WODs or like that last workout section, it's kind of all on you and you're by yourself, and they'll come around and help you with form a little bit, but it's hard when you're in a group session. You don't get that one-on-one help. And with it being so high intensity and fast paced, is you have more room for error and injury. If you can't slow movement down and understand your stabilization, more likely that you're to get injured. And that's kind of where the physical therapy background comes from, where I was in the physical therapy world and we very much were against CrossFit, even though it was kind of interesting that more and more CrossFit gyms were having physical therapists or physical therapy practices on site. That should just kind of ring a bell that, all right, there's a lot of injury happening here and we need to dive into why and how this is happening. So for physical therapy, we're like, well, this is a moneymaker. It makes sense to put PTs inside of CrossFit gyms. But I guess on CrossFit's, in their point of view, they're like, well, we want to be an establishment where it's like not a one-stop shop, but like, how can we improve these athletes' performance the most that we can? So it really does, if you were a college athlete, you had that trainer's room, you had everybody at your disposal, like in their one setting. And I think that's what CrossFit is very appealing to for college athletes or even high-level high school athletes, if that's what you were. That's appealing for them because we're used to having that and we had all of our resources right at hand. So I do think there is like different point of views to look at it for it, but there is a lot of injury and a lot of research is being done over CrossFit and the amount of injuries that are happening. I know a lot of people have been injured through CrossFit compared to the amount of people that I feel like are injured in the gym when they're working out. You don't hear about that as much. Not to say that doesn't happen, because it does. People deadlifting with improper form, all of the above. But CrossFit is more known for these injuries, and I do believe it is from the too fast, like the high pace things that you can't control with good form, and then you start to train in that form, that broken form, where if you have something broken along your chain, where's it going to go? It's going to lead to injury. So that is the big issue with CrossFit, is the injury part. And I think a lot of the upper body too, because a lot of us aren't typically most upper body strength. Like, we're not all the biggest upper body strength. We're probably more lower body. Like, our lower body is more used to doing things like running and jumping, those type of activities that we're now having in CrossFit. You're now having your upper body do swinging on rings with, like, as a grown adult, like a lot more weight that we're having than when we were a child. But I think that is also correlated to the injury as well, is our upper body is doing much more fast, high intensity movements that our legs primarily we're used to doing. And now we're kind of flipping the script and now allowing our upper body to do it when it's not used to that. And you kind of have to go really slow with it, make sure that we have that strength to begin with in our upper body. Another factor is that it is too long to be considered HITT. And I'm mostly calling out, this isn't just for Orangetheory or CrossFit or whatever, but most of those sessions are too long to be considered HITT. HITT should be 30 minutes or less. I would even say 10 to 15 minutes would be true HITT if you're going high intensity in that interval where you're like 30-second rest, 30-second on. If you guys have ever done any of the runs that are programmed for you guys every now and then, of doing like a 30-minute jog, 30-minute acceleration, 30-minute jog, you try to give yourself a little bit of rest in there, and you know that workout kicks your ass every time. And that's one that you're going to want to keep getting better and better at, but you don't want to because it sucks, right? So if you've ever done that, you know how the interval run is, and that's basically HITT, right? We were doing high intensity where we're sprinting and then going down for a little bit of recovery period. Very hard to do that for long periods of time and keep up with it. The other factor, and this is just going on to, this might not even make sense the way that I'm going down into this, but this all correlates and it kind of like loops around. But with having the inability to recover, right? And these long time periods, and maybe these multiple sessions that you're doing these workouts, we are now having these high levels of cortisol released. And this is good in theory for the workout, right? We want higher cortisol levels when we're working out. That promotes that fight or flight, but it's how many times we're constantly getting in that. If your workout is constantly these high levels of cortisol and always entering these fight or flight phases or sympathetic states, you are constantly in that high drive state and you're not able to get out of it. And you're doing this every day to yourself, let alone the aspect that we have high stress jobs. Literally every single one of us, guarantee we don't all have high stress jobs, but we all have stress within our job, within our life. Never, feeling like we're always trying to catch up to something, always having to-do lists to check off, always surrounded by stress 24/7. That has just become our life now, unfortunately, as we've moved up to this fast-paced society where we kind of have to keep up. We have deadlines, we have demands. Think about how you guys like starting your day opening with emails. I was actually just talking to Houston today. He's like, another email. He's like, I hate my emails. They're never good. And I'm like, I feel like most people hate their emails. Like, most people don't enjoy opening their emails and have some good emails that they like. If they do, it's on the rarity. But most times when you're looking at your emails, it's stress, right? It's perceived stress. This person's complaining at work. I got to fix this. I got to do that. Stressful. Our lives are constantly stressed. And if we're trying to improve our health by exercising, but we're actually doing the reverse by doing these HITT workouts when we're already a highly stressed individual that we don't know how to modulate our stress, this just wreaks havoc on our body and will actually be doing worse harm for our health than when we thought we were doing a good thing for our health. I also feel like too, most people, when they want to fast track, and I kind of made a reel about this, when they want to fast track their health, they kind of do what mainstream media tells us to do. Follow these diets, follow the keto diet, right? The most popular things that people are talking about. Somebody that doesn't know about any of this stuff, what is their first instinct going to be? It's going to be to do what's trending, to do what people are talking about, to do what people are paying to advertise for because they know they're going to make a lot of money off of it. That's sad, but this is why we need to talk about this more and spread the ideas that, hey, you don't need to always be dieting. You don't need to cut carbs. You don't need to do the new Noom diet, Weight Watchers. You don't need to do that. And you don't need to enter yourself. You're already a highly stressed person. You don't need to be entering into these HITT workouts and doing them every single day. Are you even able to recover from them? if you ask somebody that, they might not even know what recovery looks, sounds, or feels like. And if that's the case, do they really know if they're actually improving their health? And something that we're supposed to see exercise as being beneficial to our health, improving our health, improving our life, is actually doing the opposite for some people if they don't know it. Your body does not understand what CrossFit is or what a ketogenic diet is. Actually, it simply perceives tension, load, stress, and nourishment. And remember this going forward, as it's a key component to understanding the mechanisms in which our body reduces or upregulates total hormone output. So cortisol is a stress hormone. It is a hormone. So this is one factor involved in the way it manipulates our body by overdoing it and kind of under recovery. HITT will burn more calories in less time. Yes, this is true. This is awesome. This is why for a lot of people who are kind of strict with time, they don't have a lot of time to get to the gym, do 30, 40 hour minute workouts. Hey, they can get done 10, 15, 25-minute workout, and they burn pretty substantial amount of calories in a small time. That's the benefit of it. That's why it's awesome. And it also leaves you with that endorphin feeling of, hell yeah, that was a great workout. Why do you feel like Orangetheory, and I don't mean to call it Orangetheory, but why do you feel like people are so ranting and raving about it? Like, that was the best workout ever. That was the most kick-ass workout. Because they released a bunch of endorphins. They were in that high intensity state. And they loved it and it felt good. But at the same time, these endorphins that are making us feel better actually could be inhibiting our body. And I'll kind of talk about that in a couple paragraphs. But they're addicted to that sensation of, that was a kick-ass workout. I loved it. Although their body hurts, they're unable to recover, but they associated it with endorphins. Good. That was a great workout. And that's where they become hooked onto it. I also think if you are, somebody that struggles with the perception of workouts and you only work out to burn calories, you're going to see those people end up in Orangetheory. Because they get praised and like they get awarded for doing more workouts. They get awarded for burning more calories. That's not necessarily true with CrossFit. They're not like tracking your calorie output, but Orangetheory kind of puts you on blast and shows you how your exercise, how you're doing your workout compared to everybody else in the room. And you get shown to everybody how many calories that you burn. So it becomes a calorie burning, heart rate focused like center, where I don't think that's how our perception of exercise should be. Exercise should be what our body is able to do, what all can it do, and how can you continue to feel good. So I guess that's kind of my thoughts on it as well, is there's an emphasis on it could promote bad habits with exercise, or, thoughts on exercise. I'm letting somebody in. So with the fact that it burns more calories in less time, I already mentioned how that's an awesome thing at a point in time, but it also doesn't consider if you are under eating or not nourishing in these high demand activities. So yes, it is burning more calories. That's awesome. But are you continuing to burn more calories than you're taking in? At that point in time, this is how it is kind of not benefiting us either, especially long-term. You shouldn't always be dieting. You shouldn't always be in a deficit. And if you're constantly burning more calories by doing all these HIIT workouts multiple times a day, every week, we're not taking in as many calories as we're burning. And we do not burn as many calories during a workout as we think. Some of you that's been with me for a while, I talk about this, that total daily energy expenditure. That is kind of modulated by 4 different things of how many calories are burned throughout a day. That is our basal metabolic rate, which I've already mentioned before, is we don't really have a control of that. That's just what our body just burns as we are breathing, as we are living. The one factor that can be, I guess the one thing that can change that is our thyroid. So if our thyroid is not functioning properly, that downregulates. Well, that kind of downregulates and kind of lowers our basal metabolic rate. So we're not burning as many calories, just living and breathing. On the other hand, we have the thermic effect of food. So that is how our body burns calories, by absorption, digestion, elimination, all of the digestive processes. Next component would be physical activity. That's our workout. And that actually makes up the smallest percentage of how many calories are burned in a day. What makes up the most is basal metabolic rate. Your basal metabolic rate could be well over 1,000 calories, and you're also over here trying to diet when your basal metabolic rate is that high. Add in your physical activity, add in your hour-long workouts that you're doing every day, add in your thermic effect of food, which makes up a percentage add up your NEAT, or the non-exercise activity that you're doing. If you have a standing job or an on-the-go job, you're a hospital worker, your energy expenditure is very, very high, and you're not giving it enough. You're constantly under eating. So at that point in time, one thing that we can do to burn more calories is actually we burn more calories with NEAT rather than physical activity, which is kind of interesting. And I think it's kind of awesome, as well as we don't have to work as hard as we think that we need to for workouts. If we can just utilize NEAT and being more active by moving throughout the day, standing up, sitting down, going for walks, walking to go get the mail, walking to take the trash out, just little activities like that is huge. And it doesn't require us to recover as hard as doing our physical activity, or say these HITT classes or HITT workouts are. So just a little note here, and I stole this clip from somebody else, but this is actually Alicia. I can send you guys her Instagram. She's really good to follow for hormonal health. But she says, don't be lazy and think your workouts are the only activity you need in a day. And that's referencing NEAT. NEAT is very important. So talking about the hormonal compromise from doing these Orangetheory workouts, from doing CrossFit, is, again, you're not able to recover properly from that workout. You're doing them every day. If you're not able to recover from that workout, we have increased stress in our body because we have increased inflammation. We have your neurological system fatigue, right? Because it's in that fight or flight state every day for hours and hours, and you also have a very stressful job. You're not ever out of that fight or flight state. So now our nervous system can become fatigued. Sam and I don't know, I always mention to you, Sam, because you're like the only head that I see on here, but there was a point in time where we were talking about her grip strength, and that was kind of a feedback for us to know when she needed to recover a little bit. So I think at that point in time, we gave her a deload week because she was constantly talking about grip strength just not being there. So that is a big sign that your neurological system is kind of taxed, is when things that should be easy to grip become hard. And things start to feel heavy that shouldn't normally feel heavy. Those are times to know when, hey, I think we're reaching that point where we need to chill out and we need to go into recovery. We need to go into some parasympathetic states to bring us out of that stressful, that stressful situation, or those stressful things that we're doing that are constantly leaving our nervous system on edge. Think of fight or flight as always being chased by a bear. You're either always being chased by a bear or having to fight a bear. Your body doesn't know the difference between you going into CrossFit every single day, you going into Orangetheory every single day, you opening up emails from your coworkers that are bitching about things that you can't control, but you have to deal with it. Your body doesn't know that. It still thinks, hey, we got a bear here. What are we going to do about this? We need to survive. So how are we going to do this? Under eating, so hormonal compromise from under eating, and this is based off of the balance of input versus output, like I mentioned. You might not be thinking that you're under eating and you're doing fine. You're not trying to restrict calories, but if you're not really tracking, if you're not really measuring, how can we manage? If things still aren't right for you and body still's not doing well and we're having a hormonal compromise, you might be under eating just from the fact that you're exercising too much. So this is where scaling back on, not to say that all these workouts are terrible for you, but maybe you're doing too much, and you're doing too much that your body is burning through too many calories and you're not giving it enough back in. That is stress in your system as well. And this kind of relates to the female triad athlete syndrome, where a lot of women will lose their period as well from the demands of their sport, where they're kind of working out too much because of their sport, they're under eating, and with that, like, you get a loss of a period and you get some joint and bone issues, and joint and bone issues as like decreased bone density. And I actually asked my mentor, Sam Miller, about the female athlete, I asked him about the issue. This is so off topic, but when we were talking a couple weeks ago, I kind of mentioned the question of, I thought when women were on their period, they were more susceptible to ACL tears. Do you remember that conversation, Sam? Yeah, when we were talking about the female cycle. And I had learned throughout my bachelor's and throughout my physical therapy career that women were most likely to tear their ACL when they were menstruating, because their body was more focused on their uterus and their reproductive system, that the little bit of blood from the joints were kind of shunted away and more towards this area to facilitate the menses, like the cycle. And that made sense because we were seeing a lot of research that correlated with, okay, yeah, a lot of women were tearing their ACL when they were menstruating, and it was crazy. It was like, wow, I never knew that. So I asked him about it, and he said that kind of actually more correlates to the female athlete triad syndrome, where not only like where it's just because the fact they're on their period, but it was the fact that they've been overtrained and under eating that kind of created this like improper integrity, or I guess just the impacted the integrity of their joint structure in general, not just exactly from, oh, when you're on your period, your joints are weakened. But I still don't, like, he showed me the research on that, and I'm still just like, yeah, but whenever I'm on my period, my joints are very laxed, like very laxed. Like I could pop my hip and crack it very easily because I'm like loosey-goosey. So not necessarily loosey-goosey, but so I still don't know. I'm still like researching that and figuring out my own theory for that, but I do feel like your joints are more laxed when you're menstruating, and it would make sense if your joints were laxed when you're ovulating too, because when you're ovulating, your body is like ready for being pregnant. It's ready to like have a seed right in there right now. So wouldn't things be more relaxed then too? All right, these are just questions on my body. Anyways, going back to the increased stress in your body, essentially it's all a stress in your body. It's a stress because you have inflammation from your inability to recover, and increased inflammation we know reeks with metabolic damage. This is all over your body. This is why rest days, this is why recovery, stretching, foam rolling helps get that inflammation out so we can get back to feeling better and have our body working properly. Prolonged leads to overtraining, and overtraining is exactly what it means. It means you're working out too much, and all of this relates back to stress in your body, stress in the other aspects of your life. This leads to downregulation of your metabolism. If your body is under periods of stress, whether that be exercise, whether that be life factors, whether that be, energy related, like if you're not eating enough calories, your thyroid says, whoa, all right, I'm going to downregulate because I am putting out too much energy and this person is not putting enough energy back in me. So I'm going to lower. This is where basal metabolic rate comes in. I'm going to lower the amount of energy she's exceeding in a day, or she's expending, because she's not giving me enough, so I'm not going to put out enough. We need to kind of come to a compromise somewhere. So thyroid downregulates, and that impacts the conversion of T4 to T3. This slows down, and this can also lead to, I think I skipped on it later down here, changes in your digestion. So if your metabolism slows down, because that's what your thyroid does, it's going to have your digestion slow down. Things are going to slow down because, again, we're trying to conserve energy. We don't want to be having really good digestion. We don't want to be processing our foods, requiring a lot of energy to do that. We're going to slow that down as well. This also gets impacted due to cortisol. So not only from the thyroid telling it to slow down, but cortisol as well. You will notice when you are, let's think about when you were in your biggest event, your biggest athletic event, whether that was a meet, a game, competition, whatever that was. You were in that fight or flight state, right? You were just that tunnel vision. You're super hyper focused. You weren't thinking about food. You weren't, because your body doesn't want you to eat. It doesn't want you to eat when it needs to fight right now. So when you're in fight or flight, your body doesn't care about fueling with food. It's how can I survive right now and fight this bear? How can I fight right now and win this race? It doesn't know that you're running a race, right? But digestion is not going to be an important factor. It's just sheer survival. That's right. Heart rate increases, blood pressure increases, all these things to help you really perform well. Cortisol spikes too, to help you perform well, to beat the crap out of this bear, not to eat right now, because that's not a concern. So if you're always in this heightened state, always stressed, with a lot of releasing of cortisol being elevated, not just in the morning, which is normal, but cortisol in the evenings, this is going to impact your digestion. Going back up here, this can lead to a lack of a period or cycle, or maybe just irregular periods. I was thinking back to when I was in high school, and when I would get into track season in high school, I think I remember I would miss a period every now and then throughout the season, and that was just kind of like, oh, that's cool. I lost my period for that month. That's awesome. Didn't bleed. But knowing more now is like, that was overtraining. That was too much on my body. Was I doing extra workouts? Probably. Should I have scaled back somehow? Yeah, probably. But I didn't really know what was kind of going on either. And it was kind of more of praised as a good thing of like, Well, that's awesome. You didn't have your period. So you can lose your period or just have irregular cycles. Muscle breakdown. Muscle is going to break down if you do this for long periods of time. Again, muscle is going to break down. You're going to stop seeing results from all your workouts, which is why, hey, you need to scale back. We need to reap the benefits of these workouts rather than continue to break down these muscles. They're never able to repair. You're not building muscle. You're not building lean muscle. You're not getting stronger. That shit's not happening anymore. You're overtraining. We're breaking down muscle because we need more energy. Muscle requires a lot of energy to keep on your body, which is why really awesome that you can kind of change your body composition by having more muscle mass. It's going to burn more calories. It requires more calories to be on your body, which is why I consider it like a fat burning factor. But if we're doing this for long periods of time and overtraining, not giving ourselves rest, muscle is going to break down because we don't need it. It costs too much energy to keep it. You can become, essentially at that point, you become more catabolic than anabolic. And catabolic does mean breakdown. Anabolic means build up, which is why you see things called anabolic steroids. That's not necessarily true. We have anabolic hormones and anabolic actions that enhance our muscle mass, that enhance our performance, enhance our body rather than break things down. So I put down here that cortisol is catabolic. And let me cross-check that because, I'm thinking about it just before I brain dump thoughts out. Let me double check that statement because now I feel like I don't know if that's true. Sleep is impacted. So if you have high stress or overtrained, we need rest and recovery, right? Well, sometimes this can impact your ability to sleep. If you're doing this for prolonged periods of time, this impacts recovery even more. With the high levels of cortisol, it impacts our ability to sleep, which is why people who feel like they are wired but tired in the evenings, that is related to high levels of cortisol, most likely. Not to say that that's 100% true, but that does correlate to having higher cortisol levels in the evening when they shouldn't be. They should be lower. There's an inverse relationship with, it shouldn't be metabolism, it should be, melatonin. So if you have high levels of cortisol, your body's not going to be releasing melatonin. It's going to keep putting that off, which is why you will remain awake and alert, which is what cortisol is. When you wake up in the morning, you want to be awake and alert. That correlates to cortisol. So if you're feeling like this in the evening and you're not ever slowly winding down, kind of getting that sleep pressure that we talked about a week or two ago, that is going to impede your sleep. Because if we're not getting melatonin, we're not going to be going into sleep, or we could potentially be going into sleep, but we're not going to have good quality sleep. Could be restless. Maybe you're waking up in the middle of the night and you have trouble falling back asleep, things like that. Endorphins begin to inhibit health or reproductive hormones. I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but I wanted to dive into this where you could be hooked on feeling those endorphins, but having those constant release of endorphins is going to impact our reproductive hormones because it's going to stop basically having that communication with our ovaries, with our reproductive system, because we've overtrained. We've been releasing these good feel hormones too much, and we're not letting them settle down, that we can't really get into that rest and relax state where our reproductive health kind of proliferates, or just hormones in general, right? Sleep. The only way that we can really process our hormones, metabolize hormones, is through sleep. When we're finally at rest and our body is not doing all these other different things, finally able to rest and kind of reap the benefits of everything that we're doing. Your liver has to work harder to pump out hormones to balance. That is also going to be related to liver enzymes as well. Liver enzymes help break down the different, think of the impact of birth control in your liver. Your liver processes your hormones by releasing enzymes. So this is a big factor in you're going to have organs start to be working harder. Again, we're shutting down different systems too with our thyroid and having these high inflammation markers, but that's going to be hard on your liver to kind of pump out, or help the pancreas pump out glucose, things like that, to improve your health, and so many different facets. I'll tell you, when I finished my show last year, I had a lot of inflammation markers. So I became like anemic too, because I wasn't able to get like good nutrients stuck to my blood. I was overtraining, and I had some, like, my liver was kind of dumping out things to help my pancreas pump more glycogen. So it's like, I messed with so many systems. Digestion was crappy. I literally shit my pants, I think twice, like not intentionally. It just was so, it was so fast. I wasn't able to really control my bowels. So that's a big sign too. Exercise induced and coffee induced. If you're pooping like mid runs, like that's not a normal thing. And that was kind of like a scary thing for me. I'd be kind of terrified to go on not terrified to go on a run, but I would be like, oh, gotta make sure I dump everything out before I go for a run, because I don't want to accidentally like poop in a 2-mile run. Like I should be able to keep my bowels in 2 miles. I think that should be a thing, but it wasn't. And I also had, what else was going on? My thyroid, my TSH, my main communication from my brain to my thyroid was saying, hey, I need more thyroid be pumped out. So my thyroid it was elevated in a sense, but it was only the TSH hormone was elevated because my body was perceiving that it needs more, and the processing of it. So from the thyroid and down, like what all my thyroid is actually doing is everything was kind of low. So it's almost like my brain was telling my thyroid to make more, and my body wasn't really doing anything with it. Also didn't have a period for a year. And I didn't get that. And well, you know, you still need to know all that, but I didn't get that until I want to say August of 2020. So been going good since then. But think of all the things that it impacts. Like it's not just like, yes, I was overtraining, but I was also under eating. All this stuff starts to build up. My cortisol was so high in the morning and more in the evenings too, which has a big factor for a lot of things. I already mentioned changes in your digestion can increase testosterone, which can impact your progesterone and estrogen relation. Again, we need a good balance between these two through the different phases of our cycle, and testosterone can kind of impact our ability to have progesterone. Remember, we need progesterone for ovulation. Progesterone is our protect hormone for our, I guess, reproductive health. So protecting is ovulation, where we want that to be like elevated because we're getting ready to, in theory, we're supposed to be pregnant when we're ovulating, and our body wants to kind of go into that protective zone or protective state in order to keep whatever that might have just been implanted in there. Also, this leads to increased mouth breathing with this prolonged, and this is like referring to like what James had talked about too. The emergency breathing, if you're always, you know, doing high intensity interval training, you're always mouth breathing, right? That's using our, I guess I want to say emergency breathing, where you're always like breathing like this, like, or always bringing that through in and out through your mouth rather than in and out through your nose, which is what is beneficial. That is very good to be breathing in and out of your nose. You're trying to get oxygen in as fast as possible by breathing through your mouth, but are you actually like taking it in? Are you actually breathing with your diaphragm, which is very closely related to your liver? It's very closely related to your digestion, improving all those areas that are actually being shut down by these things. By breathing in and out through your nose, you're also impacting your rest and digest state. So going more into that parasympathetic, that slow down, which is why you see yoga and mindfulness and meditation is big on breathing, because it kind of pulls you down. It pulls you out of that stressful emergency breathing into relaxed breathing, where a lot of these things can be fixed or reverted or improved from. And I would say most people, just within my clinical experience, are not breathing through their diaphragm. They might not even be consciously aware that they're breathing in and out through their mouth all the time. So I would actually have people just lay down, and I'd be like, all right, just give me 5 breaths. And I wouldn't tell them how to do it. I just wanted to see, you know, how they were breathing. And 9 times out of 10, you know, everybody was breathing with their chest. They weren't like, they might be breathing in and out through their nose, or maybe in through their mouth, out through their nose, whatever it was, how they did it, but they still weren't able to understand how to belly breathe or how to take it in 360 around your waist rather than just straight to your chest. So what is appropriate if we're looking at, you know, Orangetheory, CrossFit, these high intensity interval training versus strength training versus LIST, which would be that low intensity steady state. So that's your runners that are running for distance, or your long endurance cyclers, things like that, versus NEAT. I don't know, I just went blank there. But it applies to you. Like, how do you feel? Are you able to recover from these type of workouts? Are you able to recover from your CrossFit? Knowing your history, like what is your current training regimen like? Are you doing HITT every day? Are you doing HITT a couple times a week? Are you doing it after strength training? How often are you doing How often are you doing each and every one of these? You guys know I'm a big component to strength training. It's very beneficial for, I would say, every single person to be strength training. And yes, you could do strength training with your Orangetheory and with your CrossFit, but I think it's appropriate to have rest intervals so that you're not just dying and gasping and on your back after every single workout. You need to have that rest. You need to have that recovery so that you can actually reap the benefits of your workout. Are you able to recover from your workouts, as in you're not super sore? Are you somebody that every time you work out the next day you're sore? If so, that's probably too much for you. You probably did too much. We need to scale back. Or maybe you have 1 or 2 workouts a week that are like that, but you give yourself time in between those times where you feel super sore. If you're super sore, give yourself a day or 2 before you go back and try that same workout again, before you go back and do a workout similar to that intensity. Be smart about it. You guys are you know your body's best. You know what you feel. You know that more than how you can even like correlate that to me on your check-ins. You can feel it more than you can say it to me. So be a advocate for your own health and all the many different facets, but especially with your ability to recover from workouts. I think that's very important that you guys learn your bodies, learn how they feel, learn what feels good, learn what is too much, and all that stuff. I personally, don't think anything is wrong with high intensity interval training if you are a healthy individual, you're recovering well, blood labs are great. And how do you know that? You get blood labs. You see if you have any of these underlying issues. PCOS, are you postpartum? Are you post-birth control? Are you birth control person? What's your dieting history like? Are you on several diets? Have you been dieting for months on months on months? When was your last diet break? This matters too, because again, this goes back to maybe they're training at a good intensity or good training regimen, but they're also under eating. So now it's not the training that's the issue, it's the dieting history. So we need to increase their calories and probably scale back on workouts just a little bit, or increase their calories, they can keep the same training regimen. Hashimoto's, that's an autoimmune disease that affects your thyroid. Look into your biofeedback. How is your stress? How is your recovery? How is your sleep? All the things that I'm looking at for you guys each week. Be an advocate for yourself. How is your nutrition? Were you hitting your appropriate macros? How is your stress like? Like, what are things that are stressing you out? And you might not even be aware of some of these things. How's your digestion? Are you going every day? What's the consistency like in your poops? Are you drinking enough water? How is your mood? How is your energy in the mornings? How is your energy in the evenings? Are you getting tired as the sun goes down? Are you getting more awake as the day goes on? Do you sleep the entire night? Are you waking up through several periods of the night? Do you wake up when you roll over? Do you wake up when your significant other moves next to you? Are you able to fall back asleep? Are you waking up and rising around the same time each day or night? Are you getting over 7 hours? I'd like everybody to be getting at least 8 hours, but are we at least getting over 7 hours? All these things are huge, huge components to your health and how your body is functioning, operating. If you wake up in the morning and your body just feels like my joints just kind of suck today, you notice that when your first few steps. Be cognizant of that. Be cognizant of any changes that you know aren't your normal. Or maybe you've identified something as being your normal and really look into it and find out if that is truly normal for you. Ask the questions, do the research, and you'll find out if that's truly normal or not. What else was I going to say about this? Oh, and these, I want to say these are conditions, but through these circumstances, PCOS, postpartum, post-birth control, if you're just coming off of that, if you're currently on birth control, dieting history, Hashimoto's, all these are hormonal compromises. So I will tell you for my girls, I don't want to call anybody out who has this, but if anybody has this, they're not doing high intensity interval training. I will not let them, I refuse, because there's just too many variables at play. And if their bodies are struggling to try to optimize and balance, there's no way in hell I'm going to give them high intensity training when their body is trying. It's not there yet. It's not hormonally there. We have issues that we need to fix, and throwing HITT into somebody that is hormonally not balanced or some other shit is going on, you can't do HITT. That's just the stupidest thing you could ever do. You're kind of putting your body down a deeper hole. Same thing for postpartum. Hormones are crazy. Hormones are crazy. You can actually, like, some women have thyroid issues after they have a pregnancy because their body's just changed inside. It's just chaos. And it's trying to normalize. It's trying to get better. But if you throw high intensity interval training into a mom that just had a baby and she really wants to lose the baby weight and she's seeing all of her friends doing Orangetheory, she thinks that's what she needs to do. No, absolutely not. But not enough women know that. They don't know about how this type of training can impact your hormone. Same thing as post-birth control. Your body's trying to regulate. It's trying to produce these hormones itself. It's trying to get the proper balance of progesterone, testosterone, estrogen, and not just have a period, but are we ovulating too? Your body is a huge complex network that needs to be functioning. And if we throw in things like stress, inflammation, thyroid issues, we're just kind of putting ourselves down a deeper hole, not really giving our body a chance to feel good, know what feels good. I think one of the statements I made one time, I like love that I like thought of this, but like you never, and this was all my own experiences, you never really know how good you feel until you feel good. Like you truly don't. If you've never felt good, you don't know how good you can feel. Again, I'm going to be a huge advocate for you guys to get blood labs, blood, saliva, urine, whatever you can do to get some tests of your hormonal profile. Not just looking at your sex hormones, but looking at your, other factors like vitamin D, your cortisol. I think, who was it? Megan, she's in Germany. She recently sent me her lab results, and we were kind of diving through them and comparing of what trends that we see, what is correlated to what. So I like nerd out on that stuff. So if you guys do get it, like send it to me, and I'm not going to be able to interpret for you, but I can kind of put some correlations together and also, reach out to my network of people, my mentors, and see what they can kind of give me advice on for you of how we can manipulate your training and nutrition to complete, or I guess, complete and work with your body so that we're not harming it. We're continuing to benefit it and help it. And maybe that is by supplementation, maybe not, but biofeedback, some things that you will feel if it's appropriate for you. If you're wired and tired, probably not a good situation to add in this type of training or just overtraining in general. Brain fog, low morning energy. This is related to cortisol. This is related to cortisol. This is related to anything involved with your gut, thyroid, all that kind of correlates together. Impaired recovery, unstable energy, glucose or insulin sensitivity implications. And this would be highly recommended to get a glucomonitor just to continue to monitor your glucose in the morning, evenings, after meals, before meals, things like that. But just to kind of like wrap this up, is this type of training is not bad. I'd be, I don't even know what the word is, but I would be stupid to say that I don't do it. I have literally trained for 10 years in high intensity interval training. That's all that track and field is, especially sprinting. I would be stupid to say that that's not something that I do or that I enjoy. I love the feeling of having a kick-ass workout. I love that endorphin feeling, but I have to get to a point where I have to be smart now, not just training harder, but training smarter, where I don't do this all the time. I scaled back on it. Especially when I was like deep in my hormonal battles, I had to really pull my training, and not just HITT training, but I pulled my strength training in general. I went down from 5 times a week that I went to 3 times a week. And that was hard. It was hard to do that. So not only did I take out things that brought me joy, like running, HITT workouts, sprinting, aerobic, like fast paced things like Tabata is another one. Cycling, all those things, I had to get rid of it and just do strength training, stepping 3 times a week, walking every day, hitting my step goals. But that is what I kind of had to do. And as hard as it was, that I feel like is correlated to a lot of like my improvements in my health. I also did massages. I did yoga classes, just everything I could do to pull me more into a parasympathetic state, because I do tend to be higher state. Like I tend to be like a go type of person, and I really have to learn to slow down and understand that slow doesn't mean you're not making progress. So this might be you, maybe someone that that is training too much or too hard. I would say err on the side of caution of trying to tell somebody about this, because people have their own judgments and opinions, but just pay attention to the things that they say. If you're working out with them or you meet up with them for lunch or whatever, and they're into these type of things, and they're like, I just been feeling like crap lately. Like, I don't know what it is, blah, blah, blah. You can be like, hey, you ever thought you might be training too much? But be careful because people have opinions and they're very strong believers in what they're doing too, especially if they're part of some of these. But again, it is not all this type of training is bad. Most people actually aren't even training enough. So if they're at least getting in some type of training, wouldn't that be better than nothing? Yes, that would be better than nothing. But at a certain point, it's okay. They've now been accustomed to these type of workouts. Let's throw in a different variable. Let's throw in a different way of training. And as always, stress. So looking into your sleep, hunger, rest, recovery, your energy levels, digestion, and stress. These are the things I kind of look at from each of you each week. And that kind of tells me how you guys are doing, how the body is responding. Repeat positive response from training. I don't really know what I was saying there. So the biggest problem with it is the hormonal impact of HIIT training. And I don't know if you guys know this, but marathon running or those long endurance type of sports, triathlons, these also are comparable with having a lot of hormonal impact that's going to be hard for our bodies to recover from. So if you know somebody that's kind of tossing between all of these, pay attention to them, see what they're doing, see how they're feeling. Or maybe this is you, you're thinking, oh, I need to get into weight loss. I need to start training for a marathon. No, probably not the right place to start. All for that if that is goals, but please be smart and don't think that working harder and harder for a long time is going to be improving not just your physique, but your health in general. At some point, we need to kind of step away from what our body looks like to how is our body functioning? How does it feel, right? It's not enough always just to try to be smaller and smaller, tighter and tighter. Is at what point will I be happy with what my body is able to do and what I can keep doing, what I can keep asking it to do without my body fighting back. You can easily overdo a good thing if you have the practices in place in order to handle this, such as sleep, recovery, giving yourself enough energy, being smart about your training, recovery, nutrition-wise. You can do this. It's not a terrible thing if you do this. Not at all. As long as you're able to do the good practices in order to handle it, your body's able to handle it. It's not an all or nothing thing. Your body, and your history matters with what you are signaling to your current body. So if you want to dabble in with it, go ahead. And I dropped a link on here for the podcast that I recommend to follow up with this. But yeah, I definitely dabbled in it, did my fair share. And once I get kind of like the okay, I guess that my hormones are good and back to like a really good range, I think I would go back and do CrossFit once or twice a week. But when I was doing it over summer, it was just one time a week. And if I did twice, I feel like I wasn't able to recover well from it. So I tried to like do creatine. Creatine can help with like your muscles and recovering from it as it applies like more water into your muscle belly. That's kind of like the recovery aspect of it that it improves. But I just felt like no matter what I was doing, I wasn't able to recover from those workouts, and that sucked. So I had to kind of cut that out when I realized, man, I'm sore as shit every day. But yeah, anybody else have experience in any of these type of workouts, classes? Maybe it's spin for you or whatever. I used to do spin classes all the time. So I kind of have experience on some of these. I wanted to show one more thing. If anybody has anything to say, you can go ahead and talk. I just wanted to show one more thing.
I will say I've done CrossFit a few times. I enjoy it when I do it, but I am definitely sore afterwards.
Yeah. Well, I think too that goes with it's not the type of training that you're used to doing. So if you do something for the first time, like, yeah, you're going to be sore. But if you were, consistently doing it and you still weren't able to recover from it, then I think it would be a different story.
Yeah.
Maybe.
It is very intense, I will say. Especially when you're a room full of people who do it every day.
Yeah, that was kind of my experience too, is I like how it started out, it eased me into it. And if I would have left like right before it did the high intensity stuff, I think I would have felt like that wasn't the greatest workout. Like I didn't like sweat or anything. But if I stayed and did the whole thing, then I was just wiped on my ass. Like I felt comparable. This is why I think a lot of athletes really love CrossFit, previous athletes, because I felt like it kicked my ass like track workouts used to do. And I kind of missed feeling that. So whether that's good or bad, like I told you my experience from it and my hormonal issues that I was kind of trying to work with. I also wasn't having a period. And then I jumped into CrossFit. Like that was stupid too. I wasn't even having a monthly period. And I tried to do that. But it definitely, it was hard. And I kind of like that. So I do feel like, when I get the okay from my body again and understand that everything's going well, I think I would like to jump back into it, but just do once or twice a week. I'd probably just have to do once because I already like to train. Like I like bodybuilding type of training a lot too. But I also like to learn from other exercises. So like I like going there to learn different movements. And I'm like, oh, I forgot about that one, right? Like you can forget about exercises if you don't do them enough. But I wanted to show this here based off of like stress and all of its impact is, as you can see, like stress is a lot of different dimensions and it can go so many different ways. What you perceive as stress, your circadian disruption, so that's your sleep schedule, wake schedule, inflammatory signals, these are like hormones related to inflammation in your body, glycemic dysregulation, so how this impacts how your body processes and digests food. So a lot goes into this, and it's quite interesting too. So if you think stress is just like, oh yeah, like I'm stressed or I'm not stressed, think of all what can also be going on involved in your perception of stress or things that you don't really perceive as stress. Yeah, just injury or even pain on your body is a sign of stress. So very interesting. But yeah, if anybody has any experience about doing Orangetheory, go ahead and unmute yourself and pop in here because I'm curious about that one. I haven't actually done that one myself. Jubilee, I know you did CrossFit for a long period of time.
I did CrossFit in college because my coach forced us to. And
Did you like
he
it?
was an idiot when it came to like planning. So I was definitely overtraining in college for sure.
Hi.
But what you had talked about, like, I don't know, solidified what has been what I kind of like knew what was happening, but I was like, whatever. Like the last couple of years, because it was like right before my knee injury, I was like, I wouldn't say that I was overtraining. I mean, I probably was. I was, but like in my mind, I was like, well, I have to lift 4 to 5 days a week. Like that's just a given. But then volleyball doesn't count. I'd be like, volleyball's just an addition. So then I would be doing that like 3-4 days a week. In addition to that, and I was like freaking 10% body fat. And then the one day I was like, well, it's leg day, but it's also a tournament. So I was like, well, I gotta do both. And then right then and there, I was like, tore my ACL.
Is that when you did it?
I was like, and then like that month, I feel like I actually, because of my injury, I had to relax and do nothing, obviously. And then I got pregnant. Yeah. And I was like, oh, my hormones are probably all like out of whack. So I was like, no, I got this now.
Yeah. No, I really do think that's kind of what happened too, is you're just like me, you're very go, go, go. And you think, or we think that too. Like I always thought that growing up, that doing more was better, right? Coach asked me to do this workout, or I'm supposed to do this workout for the team. Well, what if I do more? Like, what if we do morning cardio, right? And let's do workouts on top of our already college high demanding workouts. Was that okay at the time? I think we could get away with it then. Yeah, we could. But if we try to do those same things now, our lives are completely different. We're different inside. That doesn't always apply. And I think too, of finally like giving yourself rest, that rest and digest, that parasympathetic state, that is more prime for, okay, hormones are finally able to get some shit figured out. And I think that's how you got pregnant. I mean, had you been trying before?
No. We tried for like a little bit, but then I was like, yeah, never mind. Let's wait.
Okay. Maybe not. I don't know. It's a theory though.
And then if you ask Mike, he'll be like, we were trying. And I'm like, no, we weren't. But yeah, I don't know. That's just my thoughts. And now I'm like, and then I was like, well, now my being pregnant with a knee injury probably didn't help my knee, because it was like my joints are all lax and stuff. I'm like, great. So this like elongated the entire thing just because I was so freaking stupid and like bullheaded because that's how I always am with volleyball. Like,
Mhm.
but that's how I've always been with it. So, because I'm like, well,
Right.
how am I going to get my strength training in if I always have volleyball? It just doesn't count then. So
Yeah.
then I end up like really exercising like 5 hours a day. And I mean, I was eating a lot, but probably not enough still.
We have
But
another baby on here. Jess has got her baby.
I have to swipe over the
Yeah, slide over. The baby's right there.
Oh
I don't have a baby. So, well,
She's like, Mom, I can't even hear it. Give me a headphone.
something.
Get that out of here, Catty.
Aw. That was so cute. I was gonna say too, another thing is like our exercise perception as well. I think that the idea of doing less is better is really hard to kind of get yourself to believe when you're used to always doing more. I think that was a big struggle that I had to, pulling back and scaling to let my body heal and recover and do what it needs to do is, well, if I'm not working out as much, like I'm going to just get fatter and things are going to go to shit. And that's not the case, but that's a hard idea to get over. Same thing as when I was younger too, I used to see people walking and running on the side of the road. And I would always applaud the people running. I was like, yeah, they're running, they're working harder because they're better than that person that's walking. And now I'm like, I'm just walking and I love it. Like, I think the older we get, the less that we actually do have to work that hard. Like we don't have to always be running in order to see progress or to get better. You can literally walk and you can walk your way to your progress. And if you can reduce that stress in your life, stress is going to be your biggest factor for improving your health, no matter what it is, health goals or physique goals. Stress is that big one. And if walking is the one thing to do it, that's going to do it more than running. But I don't think we see that when we're younger. Well, thank you guys for all coming on here, and the baby's coming in too. If you guys have any questions, yeah, just reach out to me. I recorded this so everybody else can have it too.